You've always felt different, haven't you? Not better, not louder, just different. Even when you tried to fit in, you couldn't shake the quiet awareness that something in you did not match the world around you. And maybe you thought it was a flaw. Maybe you spent years wondering if it was just your imagination, if you were too sensitive, too intense, too deep. But hear this now, it was never your weakness. It was your calling in disguise. You are a chosen one, and God made you different, not to be rejected, but to be redirected toward divine leadership. That restlessness in your soul, that wasn't anxiety. That was heaven's whisper, reminding you that you weren't made to follow the crowd. You weren't made to walk a well-lit path. You were formed in fire, carved by storms, anointed in the wilderness. Because your mission was always going to require more. God didn't make you different for decoration. He made you different for destiny. Many have misunderstood you. They called your solitude loneliness. They called your discernment judgment. They mocked your conviction, silenced your fire, laughed when you walked away from things they were addicted to. But what they couldn't see was that God was consecrating you. He was setting you apart. And isolation was never a punishment. It was a sign of preparation. The ones God calls to lead often walk through seasons of silence, not because He is absent, but because He is speaking directly to their spirit. And you, yes, you, watching right now, are in that sacred season. You've been wondering why life feels like a constant test, why you seem to attract both the broken and the jealous, why your kindness is taken for weakness, and your light draws both admiration and attack. It's because your spirit agitates what's hidden in others. You carry truth. You carry insight. You carry an anointing that's disruptive to darkness. There's something holy about the way you care, how deeply you feel, how you can see beneath the surface of people. That's not naivety. That's prophetic sensitivity. The world may call it too much, but heaven calls it exactly enough. Some of you were born in months marked by spiritual weight, months like September, which in Hebrew roots aligns with the birthing of vision, or December, the close of a cycle and the entry into divine reflection. August children often carry a mantle of kingship, while April souls are messengers of new beginnings. Your birth month is not random. It's encoded with assignment. You were placed on this timeline in this generation to carry out something eternal. Even your birth circumstances were divine. Maybe you came into the world amid chaos. Maybe your family was fractured, or your early years were marked by pain. That wasn't coincidence. God places His leaders in unlikely places. Look at Moses, hidden in a basket, born under threat. Look at Jesus, born in a manger, misunderstood from the start. The greatest ones are often born in obscurity because heaven hides what hell would try to kill too soon. You've known heartbreak, betrayal, abandonment, people you would have died for. They walked away without looking back. People you trusted, they twisted your name. But can I tell you something powerful? They didn't leave because you weren't worthy. They left because they couldn't go where you're going. God removed what would have broken you later, even when it broke you now. His protection sometimes looks like pain, but in time you'll see it was grace wearing a mask. There were nights you cried in silence, days you questioned your worth, seasons when you begged God for just a sign, and the enemy whispered, "You're forgotten." But heaven recorded every tear. Psalm 56:8 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle." None of your suffering has been wasted. Not one moment. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. And this wilderness you've walked through, it's not your final home. It's your proving ground. The place where your roots go deep so your fruit can last long. God never intended for you to blend in. He needed you to break the pattern, to rise above generational strongholds, to shine light into dark places no one else dared go. That's why you were made different. Your very presence carries authority. You don't even have to speak. Your spirit shifts atmospheres. Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly people change how they talk, how they behave? That's not pride, that's presence. It's the weight of divine purpose sitting on your shoulders, and whether you've known it or not, others have felt it. Some honored it, others feared it, but no one could ignore it. You are not broken, you are becoming. The fire you've endured hasn't destroyed you, it's refined you. Isaiah 48:10 says, I have refined you, but not as silver is refined. Rather, I have refined you in the furnace of suffering. That means every loss, every betrayal, every closed door has made you stronger, sharper, wiser, ready. And yes, you've been overlooked, even in your own family, even among your friends. You've poured into others without being poured into. You've loved people who couldn't love you back. And sometimes you've asked, why do I keep giving? It's because your heart was formed in the likeness of the King. You were designed to lead, not through dominance, but through divine compassion. Leadership doesn't begin on stages. It begins in secret places where no one sees but God. You are the one God is raising, the one He protected through countless dangers you never even knew about, the one He covered when others tried to destroy your name. You are the one He is about to vindicate, the one who will rise not just for yourself, but for generations that come after you. And I want you to know this right now. Your life is not random. Your story is not over, and your pain has not been in vain. Something is shifting, not in the distance, not in the future, but inside of you. Your spirit is awakening. Your purpose is being ignited. And soon, the very things that tried to break you will become the testimony that lifts others out of their own prisons. The world needs your difference, not your perfection, not your silence, your raw, beautiful, burning truth. You are not here to impress the crowd. You are here to lead the remnant. And God is not finished. He's just getting started with you. You didn't get here without a fight. And the truth is, most people will never know the kind of war you've survived in silence. Because your battles weren't just external, they were spiritual. You weren't just dealing with difficult people. You were wrestling unseen forces. You weren't just hurt by human betrayal. You were being attacked for your anointing. The reason it's been so intense is because the mantle you carry is just that rare. You've walked through fires that should have consumed you, but they didn't. Not because you were lucky, but because you were chosen. Because God placed something eternal inside of you that even hell couldn't touch. You see, the enemy never wastes time attacking someone who isn't a threat. He only targets what intimidates him. He's been trying to silence your voice since birth, because your voice is a weapon. He's been trying to shut down your heart, because your heart is a healing balm to others. He's been trying to cloud your mind, because your clarity terrifies him. But here you are, still breathing, still believing, still standing. That's not weakness, that's spiritual power. You've been through betrayals so deep, they fractured parts of your soul. You've had people use your love, manipulate your kindness, and try to twist your loyalty against you. And yet you didn't let it make you bitter. You didn't let it turn you cold. That's power. That's strength most don't even recognize. The greatest warriors are not the ones who fight with fists, but the ones who keep loving even when their hearts are bleeding. The word says in Ephesians 6:12, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world." That means the real fight was never with the people around you. It was with the darkness working through them. That co-worker who constantly tried to undermine you, that family member who always tried to guilt trip you, shame you, pull you down, that friend who changed when you started shining too brightly. They were just vessels for a deeper spiritual agenda. But here's the truth. No weapon formed against you prospered. Not one. You've been walking around thinking you're just trying to hold it together, when in fact, you've been operating under divine authority. Do you realize how many times God shielded you from attacks that would have destroyed others? Do you know how often the Holy Spirit whispered warnings to your spirit, protected you from relationships that would have drained your soul dry? Isaiah 54:17 declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you, in judgment you shall condemn." That's not just poetic, that's your reality. People talked, people judged, people threw shade at your name without even knowing your heart. But none of it stuck, because God has always been your defense. And it wasn't just gossip or betrayal. Some of you have been fighting through depression, anxiety, confusion, and still showed up for others. You've prayed for people while silently wondering if God still heard your own cries. You've led others out of their storms while drowning in your own. That's what it means to be a chosen one. You carry burdens that would break most, but you do it with grace because heaven strengthens you in secret. You've faced rejection after rejection, but every no was God's way of clearing the path. Every delay was divine protection. Every door that shut was a detour toward something higher. You weren't being denied. You were being hidden for the right time. And now, that time is drawing near. The ones who dismissed you, they're watching now, and they don't understand how you survived. They don't understand how you're still glowing, still kind, still rising. That's the favor of God. That's what happens when heaven puts its hand on your life. And yes, they're starting to feel it. Your enemies, they're uncomfortable, not because you've done anything to them, but because your elevation exposes their intentions. You were the one they thought they could mock, manipulate, or minimize. But now you're rising, and it's not just outward success, it's inward strength. They can see the shift. They feel your glow in rooms where you say nothing. That's what happens when the Spirit of God rests on someone. There's no need to announce yourself. God does it for you. Psalm 23:5 says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." Do you understand what that means? It means your elevation won't be hidden. The same people who laughed at your breakdowns will witness your breakthrough. The same ones who questioned your value will choke on the truth of your anointing, not for revenge, but for revelation. So they'll know God chooses whom He wills, and no man can undo what He has ordained. Some of you have even been feeling the shift in your spirit, a restlessness, a holy agitation, as if something massive is about to break. That's not imagination, that's alignment. Your spirit is responding to the elevation that's already been declared in the heavenlies. What looks like a battle is actually birth. God is moving, and He hasn't just seen what you've endured, He has stored it all up. Romans 8:18 reminds us, "The sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us." That glory, it's starting to rise. That fire inside you, it's starting to burn stronger. And what the enemy tried to use to destroy you, God is flipping into fuel. There's something fierce growing in you now. Not arrogance, not ego, but holy boldness. The kind of strength that refuses to stay quiet any longer. The kind of clarity that exposes lies in a single glance. The kind of authority that doesn't need titles, just presence. Your leadership is not coming. It's already here. It's just been hidden under layers of healing. And now, because you've been faithful, because you've kept going when it didn't make sense, because you refused to let go of God even when it hurt, now heaven is moving. The enemy is trembling because the chosen one he tried to bury just realized they're unstoppable. And what's coming next will confirm it. You will not only rise, you will lead. Not by force, but by example. Not with noise, but with unshakable presence. God didn't just make you different. He made you dangerous to darkness. You've been quiet long enough, patient long enough, forgiving long enough. But the hour is shifting, and heaven is no longer just watching. Heaven is about to respond. Divine justice is not a concept for the distant future. It is the season you're walking into now. The scales are tipping, the winds are changing, and the God who saw it all is rising to defend His own. You may have thought that nothing was happening, that your prayers evaporated into the silence. But hear this clearly. God never ignores what He anoints. You are not forgotten. You are remembered by the Most High. And justice delayed is never justice denied. There were people who thought they got away with what they did to you. They slandered your name, lied on your character, took your loyalty and stabbed it with their own insecurities. And when nothing seemed to happen to them, you may have wondered if God had missed it, but He didn't. Ecclesiastes 3:17 says, God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked. For there will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed. That time is approaching. You are not in the season of endurance anymore. You are entering the season of exposure. Those who tried to use your love as leverage will see your name lifted in honor. Those who rejoiced in your pain will have to witness your rising. And the best part? You won't even need to say a word, because the same God who was silent while you were tested is now speaking loudly through your transformation. But before the elevation comes, you must release the residue, not because they deserve it, but because you do. You deserve peace. You deserve freedom. You deserve to move forward without the weight of what they did still echoing in your spirit. God is not just changing your surroundings. He's healing your soul. Yes, you were hurt deeply, but that pain wasn't wasted. It planted the seeds of discernment, wisdom, and strength. Psalm 147:3 says, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. That is what He is doing for you now, the binding, the healing, the restoration. For every night you cried and no one noticed, God saw. For every time you bit your tongue to keep peace while others lied, He wrote it down. For every time you gave without receiving, forgave without apology, stayed loyal when others scattered, He remembered. And now, the blessing will outweigh the burden. A divine reversal is coming. And it won't just touch your finances or your opportunities. It will touch your reputation. It will restore your voice. It will reposition your feet on solid ground. The places where you were rejected, you will now be requested. The circles that shut you out will now try to circle back. But don't chase, don't explain, don't try to prove. Just walk with grace. Let God do the revealing. Let favor do the talking. You see, the pain trained you, the loss refined you, the silence tuned your ears to God's voice. What you thought was punishment was preparation. What looked like abandonment was alignment. You were not meant to be liked. You were meant to be set apart. And now you're beginning to see why. The enemy didn't attack you randomly. He attacked you strategically. Because you carry solutions, you carry divine blueprints. You carry light in a world growing darker by the day, and the enemy fears what you're becoming. But he's already lost because you're still here. You're still worshiping, still believing, still speaking life. And even though you've had to rebuild from ashes, you're not rebuilding alone. Isaiah 61:3 says that God will give beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. That's what's happening now, the shift from ashes to beauty, from weeping to joy. And with that joy comes clarity. Now you can see who was sent by God and who was sent as a distraction. Now you can discern energy before words are even spoken. Now you know what real peace feels like, and you refuse to give it up just to please people. That's growth. That's leadership. That's divine maturity. And it's exactly what God needed to complete in you before He unveiled what's next. You are not who you were 6 months ago, not even who you were yesterday. The transformation happening inside you is so deep that people who once knew you will no longer recognize your frequency. They will say you've changed, and they'll be right, because you had to. You had to grow out of the version of yourself that kept shrinking to make others feel comfortable. You had to outgrow the tendency to over-explain your worth. You had to let go of the fear that people wouldn't love the real you. And now you're showing up as the authentic, radiant, spiritually armored version of yourself. and that version is unstoppable. You've been prepared for such a time as this. The battles you survived gave you the voice of a lion. The tears you cried watered the soil of your destiny. The solitude taught you how to walk with God alone. So when He elevates you in public, your roots are deep enough to stand. This is not a feel-good message. This is a divine confirmation. Your suffering had strategy, your wilderness had wisdom, and your reward will have weight. The kind of weight that silences your doubters, that uplifts your family line, that shifts generations. God is about to honor you publicly for what you endured privately. But as you rise, stay anchored. Don't let the applause distract you. Don't let success dilute your spirit. Remember who sustained you. Remember who carried you through the fire. Stay humble, stay pure, stay close to the one who made you different on purpose. Because you weren't just chosen to survive. You were chosen to lead. Romans 8:28 reminds us, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. That's you. Called, chosen, protected, elevated. So lift your head, fix your crown, take a deep breath. The reversal isn't coming, it's already in motion. You are walking into the very season they said you'd never survive. It was never just about the pain. It was never just about what they did to you, or what you lost, or how long you cried. The attacks didn't happen because you were weak. They happened because you were chosen to carry something that this world doesn't understand. And what the world can't explain, it often tries to destroy. You were born with an unusual light. Even as a child, you noticed things others didn't. You could feel the tension in a room before anyone spoke. You picked up emotions that didn't belong to you. You asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. You dreamed vividly, saw things others ignored. That wasn't strangeness. That was sensitivity to the Spirit. It was the early evidence that your calling would be prophetic, piercing, and powerfully needed. But with that sensitivity came pressure. You were assigned assignments before you had words to name them. You were given burdens that made you mature before your time. And while others were allowed to coast through life, God began training you in the dark. That's the paradox of divine leadership. It looks unfair. It looks like isolation. It looks like rejection. But really, it's refinement. Hebrews 12:6 says, "For the Lord disciplines those He loves, and He punishes each one He accepts as His child." If you've been through more than most, it's because heaven has trusted you more than most. And where there is great purpose, there is great pressure. Where there is great light, there will always be an attempt to snuff it out. You were not attacked because you were broken. You were attacked because you were dangerous. To systems, to generational curses, to lies that have lived too long in your bloodline, you were born to interrupt patterns, to challenge the status quo, to live prophetically, not passively. Think about Joseph, betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, forgotten in prison, not because he was cursed, but because he was carrying a dream that frightened people who couldn't see it. Or Esther, taken from her people, hidden in the palace, silent for a season, until it was time to risk it all. Or David, anointed to be king while still tending sheep, mocked by his own family, hunted by Saul until the appointed time came. These stories aren't just biblical history, they're blueprints. You're walking the same kind of path. That's why your pain has been so personal, because your assignment is deeply spiritual. And that assignment is not just about you. Your life is a bridge, a healing ground, a gate for others to walk through. You weren't made different for attention. You were made different for impact. But the people around you didn't always see it. That's part of the mystery. When God places a treasure inside a vessel, He often disguises it. He hides leaders in the ordinary. He wraps brilliance in humility. That's why others underestimated you, not because you weren't shining, but because they weren't equipped to see your light. Their mistreatment wasn't always personal, it was spiritual blindness. You triggered things in them they hadn't dealt with. Your purity exposed their manipulation. Your peace disturbed their chaos. Your vision made them feel small, and instead of healing, they projected. Instead of celebrating, they competed. Instead of supporting, they slandered. But God used it all. He used every wound to teach you wisdom, every betrayal to push you closer to Him, every closed door to open something higher, because when you're a chosen one, nothing in your life is wasted. Even what the enemy meant for evil becomes fuel for your fire. Genesis 50:20 captures it perfectly. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Do you see it now? The pain wasn't random, it was prophetic. The isolation wasn't rejection, it was redirection. The attacks weren't defeat, they were divine preparation. You had to go through the wilderness so you would never confuse your identity with applause. You had to walk through the valley so your strength wouldn't depend on public validation. You had to cry alone so you would know the voice of God in a crowd of noise. And now that you know who you are, no one can take that from you. The world is confused by confident humility, by people who don't need a stage but carry weight. That's what you have now. Authority without arrogance, peace without pretending, and power that doesn't need to be proven. It's felt. You understand now that the spiritual realm is real, that not every voice is from God, that not every hand extended is meant to lift you. You've learned to test spirits, to wait for confirmation, to trust God's no as much as His yes, and that maturity, that's leadership. You're becoming the kind of person who breaks generational chains just by existing, the kind of soul who walks into a room and shifts the energy, the kind of leader who doesn't need to control because your presence already carries influence. That's what it means to lead in the Spirit. And yes, it's lonely sometimes. Yes, it's heavy, but you were born for this. That tension you feel, it's the weight of your mantle, the people you're called to heal, the truth you're called to speak, the freedom you're called to carry. God didn't design you to chase comfort. He designed you to confront darkness. Matthew 5:14 says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." That's who you are, a light, a leader, a signal to others that God still raises up the unexpected. So embrace your difference. Don't shrink. Don't soften your roar. You're not too much. You're perfectly crafted for the mission ahead. What others saw as flaws, heaven sees as features. Your sensitivity, it's discernment. Your boldness, it's your sword. Your tears, they were your consecration. God made you different because you were meant to lead differently. Not through titles, but through truth. Not through power, but through presence. Not through domination, but through divine revelation. And now, the world is about to witness the unveiling of everything you were becoming in secret. You've made it through fire, through silence, through pain, and now you're standing at the edge of something holy, something undeniable, something unshakable. This is not the end of your story. This is the unveiling of it. This is the chapter heaven has been waiting to turn. You are not who they said you were. You're not what your trauma tried to make you. You're not the lies they believed about you. You are the one who refused to break, even when your spirit was shaking. You are the one who held on, even when your hands were bleeding. You are the one who stayed faithful, even when you didn't see the fruit yet. And because of that, heaven calls you faithful. Heaven calls you leader. Heaven calls you chosen. God made you different because He designed you to move differently. Not everyone will understand your path. Not everyone is meant to, because your steps are ordered by the Lord, not approved by the crowd. You were never called to fit into systems. You were called to rebuild them. You were never meant to echo. You were born to declare. And that sacred fire burning in your chest, that's not restlessness, that's awakening. That's destiny calling. That's the sound of your true self rising from the ashes, crowned in grace, wrapped in strength, drenched in divine oil. You are not the same. You no longer need outside validation. You no longer wait for others to tell you who you are, because now you know. You carry the presence of God. You carry spiritual weight. You carry something this world cannot manufacture. You carry divine identity. So what do you do next? You lead, even when it's lonely, even when it's unfamiliar, even when fear whispers, you're not ready. Because the truth is, if you weren't ready, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't have survived what you did. You wouldn't have healed the way you have. You wouldn't be hearing this message at this exact moment. This isn't coincidence. This is confirmation. You are being activated. From this day forward, walk like someone who has been marked by heaven. Speak like someone who carries authority. Live like someone who knows their life is not small. It's strategic. Start taking sacred spiritual action. Begin praying with boldness again. Fast. Journal. Seek God for instruction, not just comfort. Ask Him to show you your next move. And then move, not with fear, but with faith. The world is waiting for your obedience. Someone's breakthrough is tied to your voice. Someone's healing is tied to your yes. Someone's freedom is tied to your courage. You were never just surviving. You were in training. And now that the fire has forged you, God will send you into rooms you once were excluded from, into spaces where your presence breaks curses, into conversations where your words carry prophetic fire, into assignments that will outlive you. And when you feel unqualified, remember, so did Moses. When you feel too broken, remember, so did Elijah. When you feel too late, remember, so did Sarah. But none of them were disqualified in the eyes of God, and neither are you. He has chosen you, not despite your wounds, but because of them. He has called you, not because you're perfect, but because your heart remains open. And He will use everything for His glory. Even what the enemy meant for evil will now serve as fuel for your purpose. And when you start walking in that purpose, you won't need to shout. You won't need to prove. Your presence alone will carry weight. That's the mark of a true leader. People will see your light and feel a shift in their own soul, and they won't even know why, but heaven will. Because God didn't make you different just to survive. He made you different because He intended for you to rise. And now, you will. So breathe deep. Let go of the shame. Forgive yourself. You're not behind. You're not broken. You are becoming exactly who God designed you to be. And from this moment on, walk with boldness. Lead with compassion. Speak with fire. Pray with precision. Love without fear. Because you are the chosen one, and your time has come. Isaiah 61 says, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." Let that be the word that carries you forward. Now go. The world is waiting for your light.